It's the summer solstice, which in AppSec terms is the longest data and the shortest buffer. It's also a chance to reimagine Bananarama's synth-pop hit Cruel Summer from the perspective of an API with lyrics like, "Strange voices are saying things I can't understand. It's too close for comfort. This code has got right out of hand." Which means this week we talk with Nuno Loureiro and Tiago Mendo from Probly about strategies for web scanning and creating useful solutions for developers. In the news segment, supply chains dance with integrity, iOS trips over a network name, an authorization bug strides into a $30,000 bounty, CodeCov waltzes past Bash, and more. Sit around and stay tuned for Application Security Weekly.
This is a Security Weekly production. It's the show to learn the latest tools, techniques, and processes necessary to understand DevOps, application security, and cloud security. Your trusted source for the latest application security news. It's time for Application Security Weekly. We discuss application security a lot on this show, and we know that the implications for code security have become even greater as cloud adoption accelerates software development. Shift Left bridges the gap between security teams and developers to find and fix vulnerabilities accurately from the source. Shift Left Core is an innovation in code security with industry-leading accuracy and speed. It combines next-generation static code analysis, intelligent software composition analysis, secrets detection, security insights, and contextual developer security education in one easy-to-use platform. Learn more and create your free account at securityweekly.com/shiftleft. Are you looking for a solution to protect your web apps against the most business-critical security vulnerabilities? Unleash the power of automated ethical hacker knowledge with Detectify for continuous coverage and relevant security vulnerability findings. Upgrade your web app security with speed and scale and start a 2-week free trial at securityweekly.com/Detectify. Go hack yourself. Whether you need to manage bots, protect cloud applications at runtime, stop formjacking attacks, or secure your web applications and APIs, only Imperva offers a unified solution to protect from edge to application and data in one tool. Imperva helps you achieve more, save money, and become more efficient with fewer security vendors needed. Start a free trial today to easily protect your apps and website with Imperva. Learn more at securityweekly.com/Imperva.
This is episode 155, recorded June 21st, 2021. I'm your host, Mike Schema, and I'm here with John Kinsella. Hello, John.
How you doing, sir? Almost the end of June.
Almost the end of June, exactly. End of June, start of the summer, and start of the winter for our Southern Hemisphere listeners, which hopefully there are some listeners down there. Let us know in Discord. Because you can also stay in the loop on all things Security Weekly by visiting securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe on your favorite podcast catcher or our YouTube channel. Sign up for our mailing list. Let us know what hemisphere you're in our Discord server, and follow us on our newest live streaming platform, Twitch. Also, join us June 24th at 11 a.m. Eastern to learn how web application firewalls can help mitigate exposure in a complex threat landscape. Then join us July 15th at 11 a.m. Eastern to learn how a thoughtful approach to SASE can improve security and enable scalability. Visit securityweekly.com/webcast to register now. And if you missed any of our previously recorded webcasts or technical trainings, they are available for your viewing pleasure at securityweekly.com/on-demand. Nuno is a co-founder and CEO of Probly. In the past, he led an application security team at a telco provider where he provided training on secure coding, security guidance during the development lifecycle of products, performed penetration testing, and implemented PCI DSS across the organization. We also have Tiago with us, who's a co-founder and CTO of Probly, a cybersecurity startup that does web application security scanning as a service. He has 17 plus years of experience in information security as a builder of web app security teams, a programmer, and a pen tester. Hello, Nuno and Tiago. Thank you for joining us.
Hi.
Hello. Hello, Mike. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you both here because the three of us have talked in the past a little bit about application scanning and how much fun and challenging it can be. So it's fun to have you all here and have John joining us as well to talk about DAST and building not only scanners that can work with modern web applications, but scanners that actually work for modern web application development, meaning they're actually usable by developers or usable by security teams for that matter as well. So I think there's a couple different ways we can approach this, but maybe let's start off with just some of your background on, pen testing, what you've seen in testing the security of web applications, and how that has differed, or how web applications have evolved into what they look like now, and what makes it harder or perhaps easier to scan web applications in a modern day.
Well, I guess that applications these days, or the what's so-called modern web applications or single-page apps, raise a new challenge, especially for scanning them, since mainly the application itself is just one page, like a big JavaScript file or a set of files that runs in the browser and then usually calls an API in the background through AJAX requests, and basically these new applications, like a page is not really a page, so it really depends on how developers implement those applications as well. Like if they have permalinks to each page, let's put it this way, to each screen of the application, each section. And since it's more JavaScript rich, basically, like the application is also more complex in terms of events, things that happen in the DOM dynamically, and basically that creates a challenge for scanning them.
Yeah, so there's a lot of what you're describing is the complexity of that state within the application, and as you said, is getting ceci n'est pas une page. If we're going to call out this is not a page. And I think also too we've seen this bifurcation, if you will, this split even with OWASP, where we have the OWASP web top 10, but also API security top 10. So tell us a bit more about when we are as developers, or even the security team, building web applications, building APIs, and we want to scan them. Are there certain things that either from the scanning perspective, we want to make sure that we're setting up the scanner properly so it can succeed, or will it succeed against this particular endpoint? Or maybe we can look at that from the angle of, what's different in the APIs as well from the web applications. I'm just trying to get a sense of just what does the universe of things to test out there look like from a web security perspective.
Yeah. One of the biggest challenges for DAST scanners, for DAST solutions so far, has been authentication. And the problem has only increased, especially with single-page apps and all the JavaScript and single sign-on and multi-step logins. But actually, I think for API scanning, the authentication, it should be easier. Most of APIs just require a token, like a fixed token, an API key, or they get a variable token from a specific endpoint. So actually, authentication should be easier for API scanning, but that's one of the first things and most important things you need to set up. And then the other, in my opinion, is how well you parse the API schema. So for web applications, you need to crawl the application, find all the routes, trigger all the JavaScript events, get to all the points. In APIs, you get that for free. You get the schema. But then you have an issue. You still need to honor the schema with regard to the fields, the inputs. So if the schema says it's a string, we need to pass a string that matches the requirements, and that might be a challenge. So giving contextual information for that API that makes sense, like a name here must match these requirements, it's a challenge, and it's probably the most important thing when you set up like for API scanning. Not sure if you agree or not, Nuno.
Sure. Actually, I want to complement your answer with when we talk about developing a mix of both. Like, I think what you're referring to is more scanning APIs and scanning web apps. But when you mix both, there's actually a few more challenges from a development perspective. For instance, the authentication is actually one of them. Usually developers are used to develop or implement authentication on a web application, on an isolated web application, on an isolated API. But when you mix both together, I guess a lot of developers or a lot of people got confused on how to correctly implement authentication in this mixed scenario. And like, for instance, I can tell you briefly, like one of our clients, one time I was helping them, and they had a single page app that calls an API, and it was actually related with cryptocurrencies. And I was looking at the API to see, like, in terms of authentication, like what do you have, if you would have to configure something on Probably or not. And then I realized that the API didn't require authentication. It just blindly trusted the requests made by the web application. And I don't know, the developer thought that maybe he didn't need to implement authentication on the API. I don't know, but there's definitely some new challenges when you're mixing both, because the APIs usually, like the authentication for APIs, if you're talking about backend communications or computer to computer communications, usually use a fixed key. And when you're talking about web applications that call APIs, you need to implement authentication in a different way. It needs to be more like session based, and that, I guess, presented some challenges as well for web application development.
So I think there's an interesting aspect there too, is you kind of, as you're describing, like having the schemas for APIs, the schemas are giving you lots of context, saying these are the types of data it's expecting. You were mentioning a string, and it could be numbers, it could be emails, etc. And Nuno, you were just explaining too that from the authentication perspective, ostensibly an API is going to say it's expecting an authentication token, and you can kind of figure out which ones are decorated with you should be authenticated and which ones don't need authentication. And then hopefully you can figure out, for those that don't need authentication, maybe they should have. So is there an angle here that the types of vulnerabilities that you're able to find with this type of scanning is we're shifting a little bit more away from cross-site scripting, Sql injection, which I'm going to cross my fingers and hope we don't see that much of anymore, at least on the Sql injection side. And we're looking more at authentication and authorization issues. Sort of what's kind of that mix of the vulnerabilities you're seeing within APIs?
Go ahead, Tiago.
API scanning with a schema, with access to the schema, in this case the APIs, puts us in a better position for finding authentication, authorization vulnerabilities, because we have something that clearly states these endpoints require authentication, which is something we have to figure out while crawling the web application. So here we have an opportunity to, we know beforehand these endpoints requires authentication. So we could try to do some tests, like trying with different users and see if the information is the same or not. Because we can try to assume that if it requires authentication, it should be accessing information specific for that user. So this opens a path for improved tests for authorization checks, authorization IDORs, and so on and so forth, that with web applications are much harder to set up. It's much difficult to test for those. And as you said, cross-site scripting for APIs one can say that might not even make sense because the API, the response still need to go to the JavaScript to handle it. Yeah, I think authorization, we are in a better position to find authorization vulnerabilities with API scanning, for sure.
For sure.
You were saying, Nuno, something, or?
No, I think you said pretty much everything. It's just actually I've seen some APIs that the response is just HTML in the response, and those like you can have the cross-site scripting, yeah,
with the right content type, yeah.
And Sql Injection, SQL Injection, Mike, is something that you still see a lot, unfortunately. and something that we shouldn't be seeing a lot by now, especially after all the frameworks and languages have prepared statements. But the truth is that there's still a lot SQL injections out there, and we see a lot more than what we expected.
So what the comment around HTML responses, you just led into something I was thinking about. How does GraphQL affect this? So, I think the vast majority of us who do anything with an API at all, we're used to just, standard Ajax type stuff. Starting to see more GraphQL over the last year or two. How either, do you guys support that, or what's your thoughts around how do you do scanning on a GraphQL system?
GraphQL brings us some challenges because it might hide multiple backends and multiple databases in a single layer. So that definitely can create some confusion, because we are more used to, as a pen testers, as security testers, to test for, SQL injection and assume when you find one, there's a single backend, a single database behind. And with GraphQL, it's much harder to find those in general, because you need to inject something that is valid for GraphQL, and it still be valid for the backend part, and that might give a false sense of security to the developers, to the ones that maintain the backends, because maybe most attacks are being blocked just because we use GraphQL, like a middleware hiding the details. So it's not that the backend is not vulnerable. It's really hard to get the right payload through. And those same endpoints could be exposed internally or to a partner without the public GraphQL, and so they might get attacked. We do parse GraphQL and inject with limited capabilities on those endpoints. But as I said, it's hard to get past. It's hard to find a payload that matches all the technologies in the pipeline until from the front ends, from the request to the end of the line.
Yeah, it sounds like very much like a classic just approach in general, like with fuzzing. You need some amount of valid data to bypass the validators, to reuse the word, in order to exercise what might be actually an authorization problem or some other type of issue. I'm kind of curious too, Ben, let's sort of bring in the user side of this, that developer side, or even the security team side, because if we're thinking about just the APIs, the GraphQL, I would hope at least still there's some from the developer's perspective, they're building some unit tests, some functional tests to say, is this even working correctly? And then what a DAST or other type of scanner might come in and do is saying, can this be abused or misused in ways that are surprising or unexpected? So as you start to bring in these types of tools, do you tend to see a trend with the shift left, of the modern day AppSec, of developers trying to take advantage of these types of scanners much more, or are they security teams that are pushing this, or what seems to influence how security testing is adopted within APIs or web applications?
You want to answer, Nuno, or yeah?
Sure. Well, I think that having an easy integration with the tools that developers use helps in that process a lot. It's possible for development teams to be performing security testing without actually doing anything regarding that. For instance, if you start or if you trigger scans with your CI/CD tool, and for instance, you have synchronization with Jira, for instance, where all the issues are synced with Jira, and developers just receive magically the reports of vulnerabilities found on the Jira project, just like any other bug or task. And then at the end, when they fix the issue and they close the issue, that triggers a retest on Probably side. And if it's not properly fixed, it will reopen back the issue on Jira. And that's one aspect. Of course, there are many, but just by the fact that you're integrating with the developer stack, it just helps them to perform security testing in a seamless way.
Yeah, but I think development is not well, at least from what I see, is not as mature as you are putting it, Mike. Like if developers are creating unit tests with the security purpose, from my experience, and yeah, developers create unit tests, but there's still a huge lack of tests for failing situations, for bad inputs. So they typically the time is a scarce resource. So the few tests that exist are to ensure the feature passes, it works. So it normally misses those typical textbook cases. Okay, let's order a beer. What happens if I order a beer -1 beers or A beers? So those failing tests are still not there. And I put the security tests, unit tests on the same thing. It's like it's not required for the feature to work. It would be awesome. And actually, we one of the ideas we've been discussing a lot is to, and we talked with other security professionals, is to, whenever we find a vulnerability, give the user, here's a unit test, a matching unit test for this vulnerability. So at least you could have a regression test on your CI/CD pipeline without even in a very easy way.
Yeah, we have a few clients, and we know a few security people that do a lot of unit testing, but for security. But the reality is the majority just don't. As Tiago said, it's like they want a pass. If it fails, it doesn't really matter why it fails. They just need to do something in order for it to pass, and they are more worried about passing than the reasons for failing.
Sure. Yeah. I can imagine that there's got to be then too this aspect of you have older applications, web applications that don't have owners anymore too, right? And so therefore they maybe no unit tests are being created, if any unit tests ever were. So I suppose there's also this aspect of maturity or of the org, as well as just that enumeration. What do I have out there in terms of a discovery perspective? I'm curious too, in that discovery angle, are there certain things that come up surprising when you turn on the scanner against an organization's footprint, that you start finding those dusty corners with certain types of vulnerabilities, or are there certain themes that come up when you do that type of scanning?
One of the very, very briefly, very quickly, one of the things that surprised me the most is the file path traversal or local file include that we find from time to time, and more often than I would imagine. Frequently in in PHP applications, not necessarily older, but the frequency of we finding local file includes where we can read the whole file system, it's incredible. Like a single parameter in a single URL gives us access to the whole file system, and that amazes me that we can find those today, like with a basic payload like /etc/passwd. That surprises me.
Yeah. Yes, well, whether you realize or not, that's what path traversal is one of my favorite types of vulnerabilities ever. We tend to joke about it quite often here. I'm curious too, kind of on that topic, we're talking about bringing in scanning, bringing in testing. How have you seen successful ways that organizations have responded to this? Because I think, Nuno, too, you were kind of saying that in some cases, and obviously not the best cases necessarily even, a lot of developers just want to make the scan pass, and they're not asking those probing questions about why did this happen? Is there some other underlying root cause? Did we just cut and paste from Stack Overflow like we shouldn't have? Or was there something that was more flawed in the design that doesn't lock down the file system to prevent these types of local inclusion attacks or directory traversals like you were describing, Tiago? So I guess, have you seen a successful way to bring a scanner of any type into a broader program that's kind of forward-looking? What might a team or an organization do from that strategic perspective? Or is it hopeless for them and we're out of luck?
No, I think organizations, we've seen some organizations adding like a DAST to their CI/CD pipeline, and they want to add it as soon as possible in the pipeline. So there's some challenges that prevent that from happening easily, on every commit or on every branch. But the shifting these scans left to the development team, I think it's good, because imagine you are programming, you run a scan, you get feedback in a few minutes. You can easily correlate the scan results with what you just did, instead of the classic scenario where you code uncoded code, you submit for the security team, you wait for them to have time, then comes the pen test, then the report. Your mind is in a different place now. So if you get fast results, if you get scans in the pipeline as soon as possible, you get those. And if you get trained, and we have some customers that if you get trained to react to high severity vulnerabilities, because, I don't know, they get the notification on Slack or something, developers feel the responsibility of, oh my God, I did I introduced a serious vulnerability, I'm going to fix it. Because there's more visibility for the vulnerabilities, and that creates some peer pressure, right? That's typically visibility is good. So the scanner and the integration with existing tools brings visibility to the whole team, and that, I think, it creates a healthy pressure on them. So, and that for sure has positive results.
Yeah, and it's not the first or second time that we have clients that basically introduce like a high risk vulnerability in production, like a Sql injection, for instance, or even cross-site scripting, and like they trigger the scan after the deployment, and they catch the vulnerability, and like within 30 minutes they fix production. This happens. Yeah, this happens more often than what you'd expect. One other thing aligned with what we were discussing before is that we had some customers, like every other week, maybe not every other week, but like maybe every month, we have a customer that tells us that they found critical issues on their application in result of a scan for something that the scan didn't really identify. We are not talking about normal vulnerabilities, but something more like architectural that was triggered while the scan was running. And that's interesting as well. It means that some dev teams really have control, and they monitor, and they have more visibility of what's happening when people are attacking their applications.
No, that's interesting, because I've come across that. Oh, go ahead, John.
Sorry. That's what, as you guys are talking about this last, I don't know, call it last 5 minutes. And it'd be curious to hear a little more about the experience you've had with customers as they use your tools. From the point of view of, I think what'd be sort of interesting for listeners to think about is, I'll say you have 100 installations. I'm sure it's way higher than that. Out of that, have you seen any patterns of, like, is there a certain way that certain groups use that tool or use the results of the tool that they've had better results? In other words, everyone gets, 50 scan results. I'm being very generous and making that number low. But is there a way that either a cultural response to that, or is there some sort of pattern that you've seen that in some organizations, how they deal with those results has been much more effective?
I mean, the way they use the tools themselves, we see a lot of bigger companies that the security team is the one that is using the tool in the beginning, and their goal is like there's a lot of different silos, a lot of different dev teams, each one with different ways of doing things, with different workflows. And their goal as a security team is to actually offload some of the tests directly to dev teams. So the integrations part is a big step towards that, because they can just integrate, in this case, probably with their existing tools. And by having that seamless integration, it's just an easier way of for developers for doing security testing. We built probably from scratch to be more like a point and shoot solution. So we try to minimize the number of configurations that the client needs to perform in order to properly use the tool. That's one of the things that we battle every day, is to build a tool that can figure it out by itself. So in that regard, it's very easy to perform a scan and have a good coverage and good results without really configuring the tool or fine-tune the configuration of the tool.
That sounds also too like there's an aspect of success in using it that you were also describing, where when an application has more monitoring, observability built into it, and a scan is happening, perhaps the scan is causing a mini denial of service, not intentionally, of course, but it's exposing here's an area that is a bit more brittle on the API, or the API got into an error state just because it got a little too much unexpected garbage data. And that's also sounds like, I think that ties into a little bit of maybe John, the gist of what John was also curious about too, about how the tool can be better adopted or be part of just a more comprehensive approach to the question of what's going on with my application. And maybe application is also plural. I have a dozen, 100 different applications. Tell us a bit more about maybe those surprising areas of what this type of scanning has exposed, that it wasn't, that goes beyond just that cross-site scripting and SQL injection.
Oh, we had customers that that because the scanner probably injected a lot of payloads like a fuzzer. You can see that from a point of view of a fuzzer. They get errors on their backends or further down that they eventually can relate to some input or some erroneous state, as you said. And that customers that have monitoring in place, and it can be simple monitoring like a Sentry or something that catches stack traces, that brings them a lot of visibility, because even if the malicious payload doesn't reach the furthest parts of the application, these wrong states still trigger bad situations. And I think only if you are monitoring the application with something looking for errors, not necessarily vulnerabilities, you get even better return from the security from probably. And we had customers saying we see them stopping the scan, and we ask them what's wrong. You stopped the scan; it was doing a good progress, and they tell us, "Oh man, something blew up on the backend because some payload reached somewhere else, or the disk got filled up, and we didn't have monitoring." So these are cool things. They still show some immature parts of the infrastructure, but it's good that the security tool is exercising those code paths, all those things, and finding those issues. So that's a good scenario we hear from our customers when they use Probe.
Yes, finding out those types of things they're always bugs, and as long as they don't get found, I suppose, on a Friday afternoon before everybody's wanting to go home for the weekend, that's a much better situation.
No, I was saying that sometimes we get the applications into bad states because, for instance, our crawler didn't follow the expected flow in the forms. So it filled the form, then it jumped to another, or because there are multiple threads submitting the forms. So then the customers ask, how the hell did you reach that endpoint with those values? How have you found that URL? It's not listed anywhere. So that's good. That we always like when we find those because a dedicated hacker, an attacker, would probably find them also with some other tool or manually.
Yeah, and often they find bugs that are not really security related. Just as you were saying, Mike, just because they're exercising the application.
No, so I think speaking of exercising applications, looking ahead to perhaps the next year or the next couple of years, are there something that you're either really excited to bring out of the application scanning space, or are there particular vulnerabilities that you're starting to see more of that are new and different? This is something to get ahead of, perhaps, as developers and security teams are considering the security of their APIs and moving beyond the OWASP top 10, perhaps.
We are definitely going to put a lot of cards on API scanning and improve our API scanning capabilities, especially for those things that are usually not found by DAST tools. So you want to go, or we want to take a step forward and cover other types of issues. And one of the things that we're going to be focusing on the upcoming years is to make DAST scanners more intelligent. I think DAST scanners today, they are still a little bit dumb. Is more like brute force. It's just sending a bulk of payloads and analyze the behavior of the application. And there's a lot of improvement in the ways scans are performed, and that's definitely something that we're going to bet a lot for the upcoming years. Tiago, I don't know if you want to add something here.
No, I agree with you. Definitely, authorization and authentication issues in APIs are going to be big. Because I don't know, it's maybe it's a mix of having everything in front of us on a platter for us to find those vulnerabilities. Here's the schema, here's the endpoint, here's the metadata about these endpoints. Now go and find the vulnerabilities. So that might help in making authorization and authentication issues increase. They might exist already in the same. The proportion of vulnerabilities of those type might not increase, but I think we have everything on at our disposal to find those, to automate the discovery of those.
And one other thing that we're going to invest a lot of time as well on is the crawler part itself. Crawling a modern application is still challenging. I think we do a pretty good job when compared to our competitors. We run some tests and our crawler performs really well, and we receive comments from our clients. But I think there's still a long way to go to have crawling like a human. If you want to use that expression, I think there's still a long way to go. Like the crawlers need to be a little more intelligent, need to understand what an application is expecting, the type of data, where to click, the flows of the application, and with a little bit of AI help, I think you can also make some really good progress in that front.
Oh, well, I think speaking of progress, you've made us a little bit more intelligent, I think, on this session, talking about DAST and web application scanning. So Nuno and Tiago, I want to thank you for joining us.
Thank you. It was our pleasure.
Yeah.
Also want to thank John and everybody else who's been listening. To learn more about Probly, visit securityweekly.com/Probly. We're going to take a quick break and return with news of the week.